This is a Sports Catastrophe production.
Hey there, Heather, ho there, it's Chef Cutter Diamond. Welcome you to another Sports Catastrophe birthday boy. Now, I know this is unusual that this guy is dead, and usually I do play with people who are alive. But because I didn't really have much left for December the 6th, I did Giannis, I did Johnny Football. Now I gotta do this guy. He's an icon in Cleveland, and the Cleveland Browns are coming back to life, in a sense, this season. He's an icon for the Cleveland Browns, one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time, and the best quarterback of the 1950s, bar none. I mean, Norman Brocklin maybe, or Bob Waterfield, but no, Otto Graham was just that damn good. And George Steinbrenner was even a friend of Otto's. So Otto Graham got Cleveland through and through. But there's a lot about Otto Graham that you might not know about. So anyway, Otto Graham was born December 6, 1921. He actually was 14 pounds 12 ounces and set a state record at birth. He knows, wait. His parents were music teachers. He would take up several instruments and encouraged by his parents. Anyway, Graham would also excel in athletics and went to Northwestern, that's going in Illinois, on a basketball scholarship in 1940. He continued to study music and was part of the varsity basketball team as a freshman. He didn't even do football till sophomore year in college, not even in high school. He was invited to practice with the team, and he did all that. However, Otto Graham still played baseball and basketball for Northwestern, and he was the first team basketball All-American as a senior. So anyway, his first game for Northwestern, he actually returned a punt for a touchdown against Kansas State, and ran for a touchdown and passed for a few more touchdowns. Otto Graham looked pretty good. He even threw a couple of key touchdowns for Northwestern, shocking Ohio State and making Ohio State lose for the first and only time in 1941. They were 11th in the AP poll at the end of the year. Otto Graham did sign up for service after the Pearl Harbor attacks, which ironically enough happened on December 7th, the day after his 20th birthday. So anyway, Northwestern struggled because the players during the war era, but Graham stayed at Northwestern. So he still did quite well in all that. Northwestern. In 1943, he was third in Heisman Trophy voting and all that. He would do some pre-flight stuff before during the Third World War II and all that. So anyway, Otto Graham was discharged from the Navy late in the summer of 1946, and training camp for Cleveland had already begun. Well, he missed the first few games because of his Navy stuff, but he came into Cleveland and put up a great job. He would be handing the ball off to Merriman Motley and throwing to great receivers such as Dante LaValle and Max Speedy. Cleveland were 12-2 in the first year of the All-American Football Conference, the AAFC, which was threatening the NFL's monopoly on pro football, and went to the title game. Cleveland defeated New York and did it. Cleveland was so dominant, they won every one of the 4 AAFC championships and all that, and had a perfect season in 1948, untied and undefeated. Cleveland had a 29-game undefeated streak at that time. But, of course, the AAFC was criticized for being a minor league and that Cleveland was just basically playing with children, if you will. Otto Graham had a great job. He had a quarterback rating 112 in 1946, which actually was a professional record till 1989 when Montana broke it. Can you imagine? So, anyway, 3 of the AAFC teams, San Francisco, Baltimore, and Cleveland, were merged into the NFL. So he was known as Automatic Otto. Of course, Cleveland was hoping to succeed. They were purposely put by Philadelphia owner and commissioner Bert Bell to play in Philadelphia during a night game, the first game of the season, to try to prove things, because Philly was the defending NFL champions. They were trying to prove that Cleveland was just a minor league team. The problem was Cleveland came to play and they beat Philly. Bert Bell was a good sport and shook all the Browns players' hands after the game. But anyway, he was named the Player of the Year, and Cleveland was 10-2. Now Cleveland lost both their games to the New York Giants and had to play in a one-game playoff for a spot in the NFL title game. But Cleveland beat New York on home turf and all that. And then the next week against the LA Rams in the NFL title game, Graham's rushing and passing worked, and then at last minute, Lou Groza field goal made it 30 Cleveland, 28 for the Rams. He put up 298 yards passing, 4 touchdowns in that game. Cleveland only lost once in 1951. So, anyway, they got to the NFL title game against the Rams. And the Rams won 24-17. Graham unfortunately threw 3 interceptions. He was still named league MVP. Cleveland would face Detroit in 1952 in the final, but they lost to Detroit 17-7. Anyway, it was just weird and all that. Worse off for Otto is that when he was practicing for the Pro Bowl, his 6-week-old son Stephen died of a severe cold. Ugh, dear. But he came back roaring through it. Cleveland won 11 out of 12 and should have won the NFL title game, but again they fell to Detroit 17-16. Graham was still the NFL's leading passer and MVP, but yeah, they couldn't do it in the final, which was weird. Anyway, Cleveland actually lost the first 3 games of the 54 season, but won the last 8. And got to the NFL title game against the Lions. And somehow, in some way, Cleveland crushed the tar out of Detroit 56-10, getting revenge for the previous 2 years. As Otto Graham passed for 3 touchdowns and ran for 3 touchdowns, so he was responsible for 6 touchdowns. And he decided to retire on top, like most athletes did, like Peyton Manning. But Paul Brown convinced Otto Graham to come back at least one more year, in 1955. He was given a $25,000 salary for the year, which was the highest in the NFL. Today, it would only be $270,000. But Cleveland won a trip to the championship game against the Rams, and the Browns did it again. Graham threw for 2 touchdowns and ran for 2 at the LA Coliseum. But when Graham was taken out of the game in the 4th quarter, the fans at the Coliseum gave him a standing ovation. Well, he retired and all that. But can you imagine that with Otto Graham as starting quarterback, Cleveland was 57-13-1 with a 9-3 mark in the playoffs. So that's just amazing. He still holds the record for most yards per pass attempt, 8.63, and still holds the highest career winning percentage for an NFL quarterback with 81%. He was inducted to the Pro Football Hall of Fame in 1965, and he's one of the greatest winners and best quarterbacks because he played 10 seasons in the AAFC/NFL, and Cleveland went to the title game every freaking year. That's hard to believe. Everyone talks about how the Patriots had that dynasty and all that, but the Patriots never went to more than 3 straight Super Bowls, whereas Cleveland went to 10 straight title games. I know that the NFL at the time in the 50s did not have 32 teams like they do nowadays, and the odds are slim, but still happened. Otto Graham loved to wear number 60 as a quarterback, but in 1952, when the NFL changed its rules on uniform numbers, it meant that the offensive lineman had to wear 50-79. Graham was changed it to 14. No matter. Cleveland retired as number 14, even though number 60 is still in circulation. Anyway, Otto Graham decided to retire and planned to manage these insurance and appliance businesses he owned. However, he was named a coaching for the College All-Stars in 1958. And then his friend, George Steinbrenner, helped get him a job as the head football coach for the Coast Guard Academy in Connecticut. He was named athletic director. The Coast Guard would continue and do everything. They lost the famous Tangerine Bowl to Western Kentucky 27-0. And Graham would always continue to coach in the college all-star game and all that. He was given many chances to coach in the NFL, but he was content to stay on a small salary. Graham would become head coach and GM of Washington in 1966, leaving the Coast Guard Academy after 7 years. His 3 seasons were not really that great and all of that. Despite a 7-7 mark in 1966, he was below 500 the next 2 years. Basically, Graham was the one who was replaced by Vince Lombardi as Washington head coach. So he went back to the Coast Guard Academy as athletic director. Anyway, he was athletic director and would retire from that university in 1984. Graham actually overcame colon cancer in 1977 and was later plagued by heart ailments. He would have been in the early stages of Alzheimer's in 2001 and died of a heart aneurysm in December 2003. He had 2 sons and a daughter with his wife, and it looked pretty good. So his NFL career, well, AFC/NFL, he was 57-13-1, 23,584 passing yards, 174 touchdowns, and 135 interceptions. And you would be thinking to yourselves, that's small. But remember, this guy played 10 years, so he averaged over 2,300 yards a year. And you're thinking, that's small. Remember, this is the NFL in the 1950s, where passing was not as big and wide open as it is nowadays in the 2010s, or 2020s, rather. In the postseason, he was 9-3. Cleveland got to every championship game, AFC/NFL, somehow in some way. In the NFL, he was 17-22-3 as a head coach, but still, I mean, automatic autograph is Cleveland royalty, and you can't beat that. Anyhow, I'm Jeff Diamond, I do.